Good afternoon. Hey, my name is B.J. Dunn, and on behalf of the Windsor County Democratic Committee and the Town of Woodstock Democratic Committee, welcome today to our final forum in what has been a series of 5 forums leading up to the August 11th primary election. Mark your calendars and go vote if you haven't already voted, August 11th. Today, for a second time, we welcome the 6 candidates for Windsor District Senate. Ben Brickner, maybe raise your hand, Ben Brickner of Pomfret, Elizabeth Burrows of West Windsor, Heather Chase of Chester, Chris Dube of Hartford, Joe Major of Hartford, and Becca White of Hartford. 6 excellent candidates. We would like to thank Pentangle Arts and their new executive director, Matt Roberts, for use of this town hall theater space. We also want to thank Woodstock Community Television and Windsor On Air for their collaboration in recording this forum today so that we may share the video link broadly via our social media streams to voters unable to attend this event. That will go out on Monday. We want to thank our 2026 Forum Series supporters, gold sponsors, David Green and Margaret Edwards of Barnard. Silver sponsors are retiring Windsor District Senator Allison Clarkson of Woodstock and Dottie Deans and Lydia Spitzer of Pomfret, and bronze sponsor Wendell Perkins of Andover. Just a quick mention that our friend Becca has recently had back surgery. So this afternoon during the forum, you may occasionally see Becca stand because per surgeon orders, she needs to do a back stretch. She's not leaving the stage. I will now introduce and turn this over to our 2 moderators. First, Matt Dunn, founder and current executive director for the Center on Rural Innovation. Matt served formerly as a Vermont state senator and representative, so he knows the skills and aptitude of what's needed for this job. Joining Matt is Aaron Sheldon. Aaron is the marketing director for Andrew Pierce Bowles and served earlier in his career as a legislative aide in the United States Senate. He has lived and worked abroad for much of his adult life. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to our moderators.
Give you a couple of the rules of the road of how we're doing this. We've been learning as we go along with various forums in different places, and we're going to be both diving into deep and sometimes very specific policy questions, but also we're going to ask some rapid fire questions to be able to get to know you better as candidates and what you see as priorities and how well you understand the district. So we're going to be going back and forth. Sometimes we're going to be asking you to do the rapid fire questions where everyone will answer, but it's meant to be quick. And then there's going to be other times where we ask longer questions, and we'll ask 2 of you to respond. We will tell you who the 2 people are, and then you will, and then those 2 people will respond, and then we'll move on to the next question. That's how we make this not a 7-hour candidate forum. So if that makes sense for everyone, we're just going to get started and move along. We will be staggering, so different people will be answering questions, and we'll be going in different orders when we're doing the rapid fire ones. There will be an opening statement that that each individual will do. We have timekeepers who will be keeping us all accountable, and we're really going to ask everyone to stay within those time parameters, and that is...
You realize we're politicians, so that's very difficult.
That is why we have the timekeepers, and that's why you have a recovering politician who will be holding you accountable. So, because it's important in fairness to everyone. So, And then at the end, there will be a closing statement for everyone, which is the opportunity for you to answer perhaps or respond to questions that you didn't get asked directly during the conversation before. All make sense? Great. All right. With that, we're going to start with a rapid-fire question that Aaron is going to... Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that. Let's try that again. We're going to do intros, right? Yes. We're going to do intros, and we're going to be starting... We're going to go right down the line, starting with Elizabeth.
Hi. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your engagement, and thank you to the Windsor County Democratic Committee. I am Elizabeth Burrows. I live in Brownsville with my family and some pets. My mother also lives in town. I'm a 3-term legislator. I've been on the school board and supervisory union board for a dozen years, and the same length of time for our local aging in place board. My constituents, regardless of party, trust me to show up for them and to partner with them and to speak up for them. I'm now running, I currently represent Windsor 1, which is Heartland, West Windsor, and Windsor. I've done that for the last 6 years, got voted in during the pandemic, and now I'm running for the seat in the Senate to represent the Windsor district because working class Vermonters deserve to not just get by, but to thrive. My daughter pointed out that it's one thing to performatively support families with buzzwords and another thing to actively get out there and protect families. And so for my family and yours, we need the next senator from the Windsor district to know policy, to be focused on working class people, and to strive for systemic change. We are a part-time legislature. We're under-resourced. We don't have staff, and we need to partner with Vermonters. That's it.
Yep.
Because we are of you and not above you.
Yes. Great.
Hello, my name is Joe Major. I'm your junior senator currently here in the Windsor District. I am on the Agriculture Committee and Institutions Committee. The Institutions Committee covers government buildings, corrections, and was just handed IT last biennium. I am also the executive director of the Upper Valley Aquatic Center. I'm going to keep this part short because I want to take the rest of this to honor someone. For 22 years, a partner of mine, Allison Clarkson, served you. And she has been a tremendous mentor to me and my colleague, Becca White, navigating the shark-infested waters of Montpelier. And I can absolutely say that I would not be here without her and her guidance. So I'm going to stand up, and I hope you do as well, in giving a standing ovation for her. Thank you very much, Allison Clarkson.
Yes. So, good afternoon. My name is Chris Dube. I live in Wilder, Vermont. I'm a recent retiree of the Hartford, Vermont Fire Department. I spent 32 and a half years of my career there. I am a local individual. I've been born and raised in the Upper Valley. I'm the 4th generation, right in the Hanover, Hartford, Lebanon area. I've served roles on my local e-board. I'm also on the state e-board as the president of Professional Firefighters of Vermont. Some of the experience I bring is I've been the elected employee rep to the Vermont Municipal Employees Retirement System. I ultimately served as the chair of that committee up until that board up until the day that I retired. I am currently sitting as the alternate commissioner to the Vermont Pension Investment Commission, something I hold dear to my heart. I've also served in the State Emergency Response Commission, Homeland Security Unit for grant funding, along with the governor's, I'm the fire service rep to the Governor's Emergency Preparedness Advisory Committee. So why do I think I'm good for this? Well, I bring decades of experience protecting people, helping them out in a time of need, not just as a firefighter, but also as a union leader. I have spent the last decade up at the State House advocating and pushing for legislation to improve not just firefighters, but public safety and workers in general, testifying on numerous pieces of legislation that have improved presumptions for our members, also improving workers' comp laws for our members. So in a nutshell, and the other thing I'm very proud of is I was also fortunate enough to testify both bienniums on the Proposal 3, which is the right to organize and form a union in the state. So in a nutshell, I'm not a politician. I'm a local person that has helped people out their entire life, and I think that I can bring that commitment to the State House of having your back and getting things done for what's right.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe, I'm Heather Chase, but thank you, Joe, for pointing out Allison and all her wonderful years of service. She, too, has been very instrumental in my career. I'm from Chester, and I was a state rep, and Allison and I went door to door a lot and got to know each other when I was a state rep, and I so appreciate your commitment to our county and our state. So I live in Chester. I'm a mother of 4 adult children. I'm a nurse of over 40 years, and I'm a small business owner for over 30 years. My business has been supporting mothers and babies and families. My company has helped over 50,000 women and breastfeed and support their families. I've served on the Chester Select Board for 9 years. Currently, I'm chair of the Chester Democrats, and I serve on the Vermont Economic Progress Council for the last 5 years. So I come to this with not only local, legislative, and statewide level experience, and my priorities really focus on what I've heard. At the beginning of the campaign, I thought affordability was an issue, and going door to door and listening to voters, we really see that people are struggling, and I'm going to be asking you to vote for me so that I can help increase wages and decrease costs and hopefully get Vermont on a better track. Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you all for being here on this beautiful afternoon in this windowless space. My name is Ben Brickner, and I live in Pomfret. Vermont's problems are many, and they're not usually handed to us as a list: housing and schools, healthcare. And having canvassed now over 1,800 voters since May, not a single one of them has presented me with problems in list format. They're all connected, and they are all resolved to the cost of living in Vermont, the cost of living here, the cost of moving here. If you've got adult children who have moved away, the cost of coming home. I currently chair the Pomfret Select Board. Been on the board for almost 5 years, third year as chair. Before that, I was a town auditor, and I'm also on the zoning board in Pomfret. And those 3 seats, all around the same small table in our town office, have shown me different facets of what makes small towns run. Auditor, how towns are financed, how we raise funds, what we spend them on. Zoning board, how we balance economic development land use with conservation goals, what the cost of a permit is beyond the application fee in terms of time and professional fees. And the select board has taught me how a town runs. We don't have a town manager in Pomfret, so the select board does most of the work on its own, directly with state agencies and others. And what I'd like to do if I'm elected is ask the next question. After the plan, how does it get implemented? Because if we can't implement our policy plans, we can't achieve our goals, and that's what I'd like to do. I'm up here. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Becca White. You'll see on the ballot Rebecca White, so please go alphabetically to the bottom if you can. You obviously get to pick 3 of us, so I'd really like to be one of those. I grew up in the village of Wilder. My mom is a back-to-the-lander hippie former Brooklynite, and my father is a multi-generation Vermont Republican plumber electrician. So you could probably understand why I ended up going to UVM and doing debate team and being on the Hartford High School debate team, and then pretty early on getting into politics. And that's because I'm used to having those tough conversations, but still loving both of the people at the end of the conversation. And my mom is here, Mona, and also Zinnia, who is a high school student learning about politics. So please, if you want a real endorsement, you might want to talk to my mom. And it's just full circle to be here. Matt Dunn is a living legend of the Vermont Senate, and the reason we can't have laptops on the Senate floor. So if you reelect me, I will be continuing that tradition of being a Luddite. I have taken being your senator for the last 4 years extremely seriously. I track all of my constituent requests. And the one piece I want to highlight for you as I bump into this mic is that of your over 600 emails that I tracked, 18% of them were about climate change and energy. Another 18% was around concerns related to federal government overreach, in particular ICE. And then the third highest issue was miscellaneous. So you get a candidate in me who will focus on both of those concerns if you reelect me on August 11th and in November. So thank you.
For being here. Start with our first quick question. This will go 15 seconds, time to answer. Each person will ask to answer. First one will start with Joe. Your favorite Windsor County general store that is not in your town.
That is not in my town. Ouch. I'm going to say, oh.
You only have 15 seconds.
I know, it's only 15 seconds. Yeah. I'm sorry, would you help me out, Becca? Yes, I know. But you know what? I'm going to say Barnard. Because I bought a sweatshirt there. So there you go.
Great.
Right.
So my favorite country store, I don't know if you consider country, I still do, but it's going to be Dan and Witt's. I mean, if you can't find a Dan and Witt's, you can't. If they don't have it, you don't need it. Yeah. So I agree 100%. So it's got to be Dan and Witt's.
Norwich.
Dan and Witt's.
Yeah, that's a great, great.
If they don't have it, you don't need it.
Right.
Country store, not because we're in Woodstock, but because my daughter had a Girl Scout cookie sale there a few months ago, and I got to browse around and see all the things that they sell there.
Okay, mine is gone. R.I.P. Ken's Country Store in Wilder. What? I can't do hometown? Oh my gosh, that's hard. I mean, okay, wait, I can't do my hometown? Oh, well, I should listen closer then. Oh, and everyone said everything. Dang it, I was so ready. I'm last. I would say now Vermont Country Store as in Weston. I love that one. I've bought way too much stuff from there. I mean,
So I'm going to say Dan and Witt's. The general store in Reading used to be my favorite, but it closed down. And I don't think that Reading Greenhouse, while I love it, it is not a country store. So I'm going to go with Dan and Witt's.
We're going to talk a little bit about Windsor County in general. We know there are other towns that are in your district, so you can include those in the general ecosystem as you're responding to these questions. And you have 2 minutes to answer, and this is going to be Elizabeth and Joe responding to this particular one. So, Windsor County includes some of the highest income towns in the state, as well as some of the lowest income towns. How we represent the diverse economic demographics of Windsor County and the additional towns in your district. 2 minutes each.
Am I first?
Yep.
How do you represent the different demographics of people living in the...
However you want to respond.
I think it's important to take everybody into account. I think there's definitely winners and losers on every single bill that we put forward. I think that when we are considering, I think we should also always ask who's getting left out, who is standing to benefit the most, and who's going to be harmed by any bill that we bring forward, and that we should always try to do no harm, and obviously bring as much benefit as we can, but always be mindful of who's going to be harmed by what we pass.
You cannot take a cookie cutter approach to any of these towns. You have to go to these towns and find out what their issues are. And I'll take two, for instance. I'm going to take Springfield, and I'm going to take here in Woodstock. You have two completely different issues when you deal with both. I look at Springfield, and their housing issue is that they have a lot of unused housing, unused buildings, and could those buildings be converted into affordable housing? You have Woodstock, and while there may not be as many unused buildings, you have second homeowners that are here. So how do you deal with both those problems? And I think one of the things that you have to do is it cannot be a cookie cutter approach in how you deal with them. You go to the town manager, you go to the school boards, and you deal with them individually, and you try to help them individually. I recently was here in Woodstock, and talked to people in the school board, and they got a bond passed, but they can't use it because the AOE said that they can't at this point. Springfield can't even get a bond of that size passed. So how do you deal with both of those entities? You have to go and see what are the issues that you're dealing with there in that town, as opposed to the problems in Woodstock. So.
This question is for first Chris and then Heather. In the last legislative session, long-running debates over land use planning came to a head in the partial repeal of Act 181. Was urban bias a fair assessment of the original legislation? How would you have represented the priorities of Windsor County in the Act 181 debates?
So I know that Act 181 has been very controversial, there's no doubt. I'm fully supportive of individuals with their land rights. I'm going to fade a little bit on your question here. So what was the specific question?
Broadly, how would you have represented the interests of Windsor County in those debates?
Okay, yeah. So when it comes to that, so I'm a firm believer is you got to go out and listen to the people and take what the majority of the people want and go with that. I don't know if that was necessarily done. So I've learned that my time as being the leader of the state professionals, that I got to listen not just to my local, but I got to listen to Brattleboro, Burlington, Hartford, the Rutland, and everything in between, and it's very diverse, and kind of get the overall feel of what people are telling you, and kind of take that to heart. I think that that's something that is missing overall when it comes to making decisions. I don't think we fully vetted out. So I'm a firm advocate of listening to what people are telling you and getting all the information that you can, not just one side of the story. As passionate as I am about certain views that I may have, I'm a firm believer that I represent the people of the county, not Chris Dube. It's not what Chris Dube brings to it. It's what you all want. So that was one thing that I would certainly, moving ahead with anything legislation like that if it's going to affect such a wide range, get as much buy-in from one end of the county to the other, east to west, and hear what is truly being said out there and go accordingly.
181 was a huge bill, and I think there was a lot of positive in 181. And what's unfortunate is in the political atmosphere that we're living in, we can just attack one part of it and throw all of it out. But when I'm talking to Julie Hance, town manager in Chester, she was so happy about a lot of the positive that it had on restricting or lifting some of the rules about building housing in our villages and towns. The road rule and Tier 3, what happened was the legislature got a huge amount of feedback that that was not acceptable. They regrouped and in the end voted to not proceed with Tier 3. I think that was the right decision. I think democracy is very messy. When I was there, and as a House member, I was in the rural caucus, and I don't recall a lot of conversation about that. So I think probably the biggest error in this was not including more voices, which we try to do. I was not on those committees, so I'm not sure about who testified, but you really want to make sure the process of developing legislation includes as many people as possible so you can get viewpoints. Also, listening and not having preconceived ideas is really important in some of these things. But 181, the legislature did the right thing by getting rid of Tier 3 and the road rule for the moment, and we do have to look at that. I don't think it was intended, the unintended consequences was property rights. I think intention at the time was that we don't want sprawling roads all over the hilltops of Vermont. Anyway.
Great. So continuing with a Windsor County specific question, and this is going to go to Ben and Becca, and you'll have 2 minutes each to answer this. Communities on both sides of the Connecticut River are deeply intertwined economically, something often missed in conversations with our friends to the northwest. What unique economic opportunities do you see in our partnership with Grafton and Sullivan counties in New Hampshire? And on the other side, how can we be more effective in attracting residents and businesses to Vermont?
I will focus on, it's a big question, so I'll focus on transportation and healthcare. I think one of the big issues we face is workforce mobility in Windsor County, and we have microtransit opportunities nearby, but I think those can be bolstered. And that's not just a transportation program, it's a workforce development program. I also think we need to look at healthcare generally because Vermont is a small state, it's an aging state, and those two things are some of the big drivers of our healthcare costs. And our healthcare costs is perhaps the #1 driver of our property tax costs, especially as they come into school budgets, municipal budgets. And we may not be able to get healthcare costs under control in Vermont alone. And so one of the things we can look at is expanding the pool of healthcare insurers in our healthcare pool to not just increase the numbers in the risk pool, but to diversify the risks, which will bring down costs for everyone. And to do so, we may need to look beyond our own borders, including across the river into New Hampshire. So I would prioritize those two things as with our twin state friends.
Well, I'm married to someone who works at Dartmouth, who makes that commute over the bridge every day pretty much at 6 a.m. So I'm very familiar with the cross-pollination and the unique way that the Upper Valley exists. I would have said microtransit. As people know, I'm the transportation gal, so got me on that one. But I would argue that our major employer, the unique relationship is our major employers who are in New Hampshire, who then have Vermont-based employees who, what I hear them say is, I don't want to live in New Hampshire because I want to live in Vermont. And they make that choice specifically, and it's almost like this chip on the shoulder, I know I'm paying more to make that decision. So I think we need to recognize that and support folks who are actively choosing to live in Vermont while working in New Hampshire. And we can do that by creating workforce housing in our own state with those large employers. It's been so exciting to see Northern Stage and White River Junction build housing rather than having housing taken out of the pool for the average person. And I would love to have those conversations with Dartmouth although they seem to be a black box that doesn't want to communicate with legislators. So if any of us figure out how to do that, that would be a good move in the first place. But yeah, workforce housing, Hypotherm has certainly been a large supporter of workforce housing in our region, and I'd love to draw them over here. It's a short commute. And then the last thing I would say is we have developed a lot of compacts for certain types of professions so that those professions don't need to get special or renewed licensure in Vermont to practice that profession. You obviously are probably going to think of nurses when I say that, but it can be anything. Truly, there's ways that we can support workers getting simpler, less costly licenses so that they come back over here to potentially work as well as choosing to live here.
Okay, for your second quick question, this one starting with Chris. Which state road in Windsor County is in greatest need of repair?
It starts with Chris. So in Windsor County, in greatest need of repair. So I hear you, and I don't want to sound like that. All of them, but specifically, gosh, I don't know. I was so right here, Route 4. I was out there just recently, and there's so many grooves in the road that I couldn't imagine driving it in the winter. Say nothing about during a rainstorm or whatever. So these more heavily traveled roads are just being neglected. So yeah, Route 4.
The one between Chester and Grafton, and there's been years, and it's years of issues with that. That's southern. I'm from southern part of Windsor County, so it's the very southern part, and we've just had a lot of issues with that road.
The highway between Sharon and Stratford, I think 132. I don't know what they've done this summer, but there are rocks and holes all over it. I think maybe a work in progress, but it needs more work.
Brook Road in Bethel, Foxstand Bridge in Royalton. I mean, I could give you a full list, but we are $33 million in the hole for transportation funds, which would have drawn down over $100 million of funds. So we have a likely chance of hitting over 52% very poor road quality by 2030. So it's a big issue. The roads are going to get worse.
I really don't know how to prioritize like that. And I also, I'm going to say part of the road, part of the Route 100 on the way over to Weston from Ludlow. That's one of my least favorite, but I don't know whether it's the worst.
I'm going to say Route 4 as well, because one of the things that was talked about in school consolidation was consolidating Windsor, Woodstock, and Hartford, and nothing was talked about with transportation. And going over Route 4 in February would be an absolute disaster. So that I'm going to say Route 4.
One of the joys of being a senator is you get to know every single one of the roads of Windsor County. So great. So on economic development topics, and everyone's going to have Joe and Chris are going to be answering this question, and you'll have 2 minutes each. So Vermont is the second oldest state in the nation and is hardly growing. Do you think Vermont should have a larger population? And if so, how do you propose to facilitate Vermont's population growth? And if you think there should be more young people, what concrete steps would you take to ensure we get the demographics more in balance?
A couple of things with getting young people is attracting them. One of the things, and Allie Richards, who is running for governor, facilitated some of this when with her Let's Grow Kids, and having a subsidy for one of the highest costs for young families to come, and that is childcare. And it was vetoed by the governor, but what happens is now you can have a subsidy for your childcare, one of the highest drivers. The other thing, obviously, is workforce housing. I am about to meet with some stakeholders, and some of this is low-hanging fruit. Stakeholders in Windsor to create the Windsor prison into housing using Mount Escutney Hospital. Having the Commissioner of Housing, having Mascoma Bank, all in a room and say, how can we do this? That's just one area. What is the low-hanging fruit? One of the things that the governor tried to do a couple of years ago, and I was out front and did not make a real friend of myself with the governor, is he tried to pull back universal school meals in our schools. And I said no, because this is one of the things that would cost young families $1,500 a year per child. So how are we going to attract young families if you do things like that? So these things that are cost drivers for young families looking in are vitally important. They say, well, how can we come here if the cost is so high? So that's bringing down the affordability factor.
Good. So that's a great question. It's one that's been bugging me for a while. So yes, a couple of fronts. First of all, we need to grow the state in a reasonable manner that's consistent with what is acceptable in the state. We all know that the state is actually trending the other way. We're losing people. We're not growing. We're shrinking. And the demographics has changed dramatically. I've seen it in my role when I was on the fire department that a lot more older people are moving into the area, and that puts a tremendous strain on health care, emergency services, so forth. And that's unsustainable in my eyes. And I've talked to younger people, well, why aren't you coming here? Affordability, the service is certainly at the forefront of that. I've seen members in Hartford that get hired that spent literally 4 years trying to find a house in the area not just in Hartford, but I'm talking within a reasonable travel distance, 20, 30 minutes, and there's nothing out there under $500,000. Well, you take what a salary of a young person starting out, or a young couple, $25, $26 an hour, there's no way that they can economically afford that and live in the state. That's affected, on the growth side, recruitment and retention, for instance, on the fire, police, public safety. When I got hired, we used to have 40, 50, 60, 80 applicants for one position, fighting for that one job. Now we're lucky to get, one applicant for 3 positions. So that's a reason that, we're not seeing a lot of people coming in here, and affordability is certainly at the forefront. So we need to find ways to listen to what the young people are saying. What's causing you not to come here? Affordability is certainly at the forefront of it. How to make that more affordable to get them into the state. But we got to do it like I've always said, we got to do it in a manner that's consistent with demands. I know we don't want explosive growth with towns double or triple and exceed what is out there. But I think that is something that's being overlooked on a state level. I wish I had the answer, but that's one of those where I think that we got to get people at the table from all sides and find out what is stopping you people from, the younger generation coming here. And I say that because I got a younger kid, 17-year-old, it's a junior in high school, and he's going to be a senior this coming year. And he's already expressed to me that he doesn't know what's going to keep him in the state because there's not a tremendous amount of opportunities. We have unfortunately shifted to a more older, retired demographics in the state, and that's why I think you're seeing a lot of the issues that we're having out there right now is because of that.
Great. All right, we're going to insert a quick rapid-fire question, and this is, again, to get to know you as individuals, as we're talking about economic development and young people, and we're going to, Heather, you're going to start this rapid-fire round, and what was your first job where you received a W-2? So it can't, so it was like your first actual job that was there.
I lived in Lander, Wyoming. And, pardon me? Oh, can you hear me? Oh, down? Okay, hi. Start my 15 seconds over, please. Okay, so I was in a Chinese restaurant, a bus girl, at the age of 13 in Lander, Wyoming, and I had to wait until I was 14 to get paid. And I've been working ever since, and there's no sight of retirement for me, so I must like working. That's it.
I was 16, and in the days before Zoom, I was a teleconferencing operator So, Derricom, can I help you? Over and over and over again. And that was my first W-2. It was not a terribly interesting job.
I was a server for Kendall at Hanover in their dining room at 16.
I had my first job at 11 stuffing envelopes, and I had a series of similar jobs. And my first W-2 job was working a hot dog stand the same summer that I also worked landscaping and at a movie theater.
Great.
I was a tennis camp counselor at 16 at Nichols High School in Buffalo, New York.
People there.
Yes.
Chris.
So my first job at 16, and it was at the old Mary Hitchcock Memorial Hospital, if anybody remembers that, on Main Street in Hanover, New Hampshire. And I was a weekend linen porter. I'd get up on 16, I was up had to be at work at 5 in the morning to unload the linen trucks when they came in. So every Saturday and Sunday, I'd be up there.
Great. Cool.
Thank you. This question is first for Heather and then Ben. Some of you have expressed some interest in taxing second homes and short-term rental properties at or above the rate of tax on primary residences. How would you formulate this policy, and what risks do you see in this policy?
First of all, we have to make sure that the infrastructure and the tax department can identify and break down what's in the non-homestead division. You know, because we pay our taxes and we claim homestead or we don't. It's kind of complicated, but I would certainly entertain if we had accurate records for increasing taxation, property taxes on second homeowners. What some people don't realize is second homeowners don't pay income tax here. Some should if they're working here. That's another avenue that concerns me a little bit, because if you're have a second home and you come here 6 months and we don't get the income tax, that's a problem. So I would do that. I would be fine with increasing that. Second, higher taxes on second homes. The unintended consequences could be that we have a reduced number of people coming and buying second homes. To my way of thinking, because I'm from an area, Chester has around 48–50% second homes. Ludlow has 80% or more. So, and it's hard to really measure because the grand list, we don't break it down that way. But so I don't see that there's a whole lot of negative consequences to that, and I'd be certainly open to that, because some towns in Chester, I think it's the first year that the second homeowners are paying less, and that does not seem like they're contributing as much as primary people living here. That's it.
It's an acute problem right here in Woodstock. The Mountain View School District, Pomfret, Barnard, Woodstock, Bridgewater, Plymouth, Reading, and Killington all have an inverted tax rate, education tax rate, where primary homestead tax rate is this year 22% higher than the non-homestead second home rental, short-term rental tax rate. It was 23% different last year. It's 22% different this year. We are effectively subsidizing second homeowners' ownership in this part of the state. I believe that affects Heartland, apparently Chester as well, other districts around the state. We need to stop doing that. We need to, at a minimum, get to parity so that a second home is not paying less than a full-time Vermonter. And at the same time that we have a housing shortage, a housing crisis, the fact that we are encouraging second home ownership through our tax code, to me, just seems bonkers. And so that would be one of the very first things that I would turn to if elected once I'm in Montpelier. I think there are risks. I think they are low, and I think they're manageable. Not every second homeowner is suitable for a primary Vermont resident. Many of us know the multi-million-dollar home at the end of the town road. That's probably going to remain a second home. But I think by increasing, or at least bringing to parity, the two tax rates, we can free up existing housing stock without having to build more housing to house more Vermonters and bring some stability to the housing market, especially in this region, but also statewide.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, and this is going to be going to Becca and then Elizabeth. Artificial intelligence is a flashpoint in conversations about everything from energy and water consumption to the excessive concentrations of wealth and power. Yet Vermont's small business and fastest growing companies are all leveraging AI to compete really effectively. How should Vermont prepare for or oppose the changes AI may bring? And please discuss more than data centers.
He always does this. Well, I think we need to just start about what is artificial intelligence. It's all of our collective intelligence that has been farmed by billionaires through a platform that we get no compensation for. Where does the intelligence come from? It's from downloaded books, music, movies, unpaid for, that Claude and ChatGPT have filtered through algorithms created in places that we have no control over. So the first thing I would support is Bernie Sanders' proposal that we all get a collective share and ownership of AI. I think that's the first thing. I would continue to support data privacy because I don't buy the story that if you are using AI data processing to raise the price of a good for me, that should be allowed. I don't think that should exist. And there are Vermont companies that have argued with us that they must have the ability to do that. And I don't think it's an appropriate or moral business decision, and I think we should stop that. I won't fully go into the data centers conversation, but I did introduce S205, which was the first of its kind in the nation to require a moratorium, a short-term ban on data centers, and go New York for moving forward with a similar proposal. It ultimately died, that bill, in the Vermont Senate. But we did move forward 727, which was a very common sense, streamlined way to have an AI data center. And when I say AI data center, we're talking using over 100 megawatts of power. So more power than Burlington and Winooski combined in one location was what we were trying to regulate. So we're talking the big mama of data centers. So we can regulate those, and we can limit them, and we can require that they have funds where if they go bankrupt, or they don't get built properly, or they have toxic chemicals, that there is money to pay for the remediation, which I think we can take lessons from Vermont Yankee about how we can create, if they are going to come here, how we allow them to exist.
Matt, would you mind repeating the question?
So the question is, artificial intelligence is a flashpoint, yet small businesses in Vermont, and some of the fastest growing ones, are all leveraging AI to compete. How should Vermont prepare for or oppose the changes AI may bring? And please discuss more than data centers, although you certainly can talk about data centers.
Okay, setting aside data centers for a minute. I believe strongly in data protection, personal data protection or data privacy. I have a colleague who is running for the Senate just north of here, Monique Priestley, who has done a lot of work there and has seen really the power of data companies to come down on somebody who decides to stand up for data privacy, and it's really remarkable. I do think that there is a role for some AI use. I think that it's been tremendously helpful, for example, in doctors' offices where patients can converse freely with their doctors as long as, and have the notes be, for example, transcribed more easily. We heard during COVID that was one of the things that was really overwhelming for doctors. So there are areas where it certainly can perform regular everyday functions without stealing our intellectual property or stealing our arts. But I also think that I supported Andrew Yang's proposal of several years ago, which was to place a tax on our data use, or on, now it's sort of evolved into, rapidly evolved into AI, placing a tax on data use that we could use to provide a universal basic income. I don't know how that would scale down to Vermont. I don't know if that would even be useful for Vermont, but I'm in favor of it. I don't know that overall that AI truly benefits Vermonters. Does it benefit, does it provide certain benefits? I believe it provides certain benefits, but does it truly benefit Vermonters? I'm not convinced overall that it does. And so that also goes to that also goes to my answer about data centers.
Thank you. Another quick one. This one's going first to Ben for 15 seconds. Please name your favorite Windsor County sports or arts story of recent years. Event. Don't have to tell the whole story, just...
Recent one was the hardest mile, the uphill mile climb at Saskatoon 6. That was fun to watch, especially as I was not participating.
This is a tough one. I don't know my favorite. You said my favorite? Is that I don't know. I don't want to just think of one because truly the first one I think of won't be my favorite. So I guess I would say I'm a huge fan of just the White River Junction revival of arts and community with WRIF, with the White River Indie Film Festival. I mean, but that's a perennial thing. So I do love that. And we are just so rich with arts. Oh, is it me? Oh, sorry. I'm going to say that I think it's incredible that Vermont Adaptive, which is not located in Windsor County, but that they just opened up an actual center. And I think witnessing the push for accessible outdoor sports and like every Vermonter getting in on the action of raising funds and supporting Vermont Adaptive has been really, really incredible to watch.
So I'm not going to use my ego and say that Joe Major got a gold medal in the senior games last week, but I will say that Chester's Own had a pitcher drafted in the second round of Major League Baseball, the highest Vermonter ever drafted. And he was drafted by the Atlanta Braves, so good for Chester.
So last but not least, so this is tough because there's actually two, but the one I'm going to pick is my number one. I'm not being biased by any means, saying, hey, you're only looking about Hartford, but I got to give a shout out to the girls varsity hockey team for 3 years in a row being state champs. I mean, that's a pretty major feat, to go 3 years in a row with a state championship. So kudos to the girls varsity hockey team.
Girls basketball team, state champs as well.
Yeah.
They showed the boys up. Neither of the boys' teams went on.
At arts, right?
Yep, either one.
Okay, so I'm on the board of the Weston Theater Company, so I am going to say Rent, that started last night, is a good show, really exciting, and I'd go check it out if I were you.
Actually, Cora and I went to it at preview. It is superb, if anyone wants the Rent. So on the education front, and this is going to go to Chris and Heather for 2 minutes each. Voluntary consolidation of local schools has been discussed as a potential education reform. How would you balance the importance of local schools at the heart of our communities and achieving better outcomes for students in all districts? In the best scenario, what policy tools should the state government use to encourage consolidation, voluntary or otherwise?
So that's an interesting question. So I'm a firm believer of local control. I think it's up to the local.
Hold on 1 second. This is going to be, actually, we're mixing it up. So I actually said the wrong. So just so everyone's prepared, it's going to be Chris, and then it's going to be Becca responding to this. So we're going to be skipping around a little bit. So I just want,
All right.
You can start over.
Sure.
My apologies.
Sure, so I know that the education and the consolidations, those are all very hot topics. So I'm a firm believer that municipalities, the local people should decide, should have some say in it. I don't agree with the governor's view on mandating that. I don't think that, I think that was a big push on his end to try to push something down our throats that, that I think that if we sat down at the table and worked at it, we could find that area to consolidate. Now, when I talk about consolidation, there's some things I think can be consolidated in a manner that makes sense to me. Supervisory unions, for instance, the administrative level is, you take right in this area here, how many supervisory districts you have that only take on 1 or 2 or 3 schools, where you could certainly share those resources and save some costs, so you can see some cost savings there that's being overlooked. So I think there are some services that need to be looked at harder and brought together to come up with a plan to consolidate that. There are smaller schools out there, and I've talked to some people that they know that their school is shrinking and it's smaller, but they didn't like the idea of government coming in and saying, on a state level, coming in and saying, you need to do that. They felt that should have been left more to the individuals within their towns to say, hey, maybe it's time we have this discussion, and let's be realistic that maybe it is better that we join, Sharon and Pomfret. I'm just using that as examples. Maybe be more realistic to come together and make a school to do that. Now, I know that there are issues tied with that, and that's another, as the legislature needs to look at, is that when you start consolidating, what is the infrastructure like out there? And I'm going to tell you right now that a lot of the schools are in dire need of repair. It's been something that's been neglected not just for a few years, but for multiple years. It's going to cost a lot of money to get up to code and make it safe. And when you start consolidating, there's other issues that are often overlooked, one being busing. You don't want your kids to be on a bus for an hour each direction. How are you going to get bus drivers? But I think those discussions need to be had at the local levels and get local communities working together to find that cause. And that's something that is missing, and it shouldn't be the executive branch saying, hey, this is what's going to happen, and this is the way we want to go. So,
Would you repeat it?
The question is, voluntary consolidation of local schools has been discussed as a potential educational reform. How would you balance the importance of local schools at the heart of our communities and achieving better outcomes for all students in all districts? In the best scenario, what policy tools should the state government use to encourage consolidation, voluntary or otherwise?
Well, you've got the senators who voted yes on H955, which was kind of the omnibus education bill, but also voted against the yield bill, which would have had some excess spending threshold. So I would say with me, you get a bit of balance, where I'm very supportive of thinking through cost-saving measures to reduce property taxes, and I see those cost-saving measures happening with not consolidation of our school buildings, but with shared services like the CISA model, which we passed in H955, which allows for, and already exists actually in our district with the Mountain View School Supervisory District. They are able to provide services as a group, and that would be my answer to the policy tool that the state should provide, is CISAs or BOCES, if you're familiar with that, so that you could have multiple small schools or small school districts that share a pool of resources, whether that be bulk purchasing, providing a speech-language pathologist for maybe a very unique thing that's happening in one student's circumstances in this community, and paying a full-time person for that one student is a cost-prohibitive support, and then also having it potentially then be available for another school where there might be another student. So there's those kinds of balances we can do with the CISA model, and that would be my tool. To achieve better outcomes, I think that we need to provide more supports for our social services outside of the school system. We have basically forced social service providing and mental health support exclusively on our public education system. And that doesn't work. They're not social workers who are in our school buildings, and we are forcing them to be. So we need to right-size that, and I think having the Department of Health, like in every other state, unlike ours, manage that conversation would be beneficial, and I hope they step up to the table in the future to do that. And the last thing I would just say is I am a Hartford Hurricane graduate. I'm a public school student at heart, and I was endorsed by the National Educators Association in this race.
This question is for first Heather and then Elizabeth. How should the unique legal status of the Dresden School District, as well as Rivendell to our north, be reflected in potential education reforms?
Could you repeat the question?
How should the unique legal status of the Dresden School District, as well as Rivendell to our north, be reflected in potential education reforms?
Well, I don't know. I just don't know. I'd have to do research on this question and get back to you.
For clarity, both of those are congressionally designated by state districts and therefore are frequently excluded or seen to be excluded from the kinds of legislation and education reform efforts.
Okay, I don't know how to begin to answer it, so my apologies, but I'd have to do my research and get back to you.
Well, I would say that first we should ask Dresden and Rivendell whether they want to remain with this status. I don't necessarily get the sense that that they do. Not to say that they don't, but they should be given the chance to answer that question first, whether they want to maintain that status. And if they don't, then we ought to find a way to allow them to dump each other, if that's what they choose. I think when we are talking about things like, a really great example is Dresden, where Norwich was put in a CISA, which is a collaborative education services agency. They were put in a CISA that starts with Hartford and goes all the way north, the northeastern CISA. Meanwhile, Windsor Southeast is in a CISA that goes from Heartland, Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union, all the way down to the southern border, even though we currently share services between Hartford and Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union. So that's an example of how when we have considered education transformation or education reform, we have not taken into account students. We have not taken into, we've put together some kind of shoddy bills that don't take these specific cases into account. And we need to go back and look at those. And yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask a very, this is getting specific, but it's appropriate for the region, and particularly where we're sitting, and this is going to be for Joe and Ben, okay? So the Mountain View School District has bonded for a large amount of money for a new school building. However, there is a disagreement on the interpretation, and I'm happy to go into more of the details if you're not familiar with it, between the school district and the Secretary of Education. And so the question is, which interpretation do you support? And if elected or re-elected, what specific actions would you take to resolve this dispute, since the implications are both time-sensitive and significant?
Well, one of the issues is the AOE was not, who had set up a meeting with the school board, did not even come down and take that meeting to air out what exactly was supposed to happen. This is the problem that I see with the AOE right now, is there was a meeting set up by the school board to come and flush this out, face to face. Then at the last minute, the Agency of Education said, you know what, we're not going to come, and we have a laundry list of reasons why. Face-to-face meetings, even if it's a disagreement, is so vitally important. there's nuance to everything. So when they come out and the last thing that they go and said, oh, we're not going to come and even talk to you, there's an issue. So I talked about a couple of days ago, I was at an event that some school board members were there, and they asked me, what should we do? I am always of the notion that the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And contact me, contact until December Senator Clarkson, and possibly until December myself and Senator White. It is, contact the Agency of Education. It is so vitally important to get your message out there, tell them how you feel, and continue to tell them how you feel. This is important. And for them to cancel that meeting last minute is disgraceful.
Well, I agree with all of that. I'd go a little further and just point out the fact that the building we're talking about is 75 years old, functionally obsolete. It's a health and a safety hazard for the children we send into it. But Mountain Views and its predecessor district, the Woodstock Union District, has been working on a new school building for at least 10 years. And it's been operating by each of the rules that have been set forth over those 10 years by the AOE. It put a bond up. It passed by 22% last March. I think the cancellation of the meeting was disrespectful, and I think that the AOE's interpretation of the pending rulemaking is bogus. But I think more to the point, the district has jumped through every hoop and cleared every hurdle it has ever been asked to jump over or clear. And the AOE's position that now we need to abide by new rules that haven't even been written yet before they'll take a meeting, I think is bad government, I think it's bad policy, and I think it's bad for the people who live in this school district.
Yeah.
Thank you. Another quick one here. Please name, and sorry, this is going first to Becca and then everybody else for 15 seconds. Please name your favorite Windsor County arts venue or exhibit space.
Present company, but present location excluded, because it's too easy.
Okay. Sorry, Pentagle. Northern Stage. I'm sorry. It's Northern Stage.
Can you hear me? I'm going to go with Feaston Field.
I'm going to go Northern Stage as well, and it's because I'm on the board. And by the way, the 31st, Oklahoma is playing, so if you go, great show.
So there's a lot of them. Honestly, and I know that they got flooded, but the Weston, was it the Weston Playhouse? Yeah, I think that was kind of, I like that area too. It's kind of, picturesque and simple, but I haven't seen it since it got flooded and they renovated it, but, certainly give me a reason to go down there.
They haven't renovated it yet.
No, they haven't?
No, they're way behind, but we did get some funding for the dam. But anyways, I have to just say, Weston Theater Company at the new area. It's great.
Those are all great answers. I'm going to go closer to home to not repeat any. Pomfret's a small town, but I think it punches above its weight in several respects. Ski area, the finest general store. But we also have artistry. And artistry with its gallery and its makerspace, its intimate theater, all right in South Pomfret. If you haven't gone, you should check it out.
Great. All right, we're going to go with some additional policy, what I will call interview questions. So this is outside of policy, but it's more about who you are and how that will inform you as a senator. And this is going to be for Elizabeth and Joe. Okay? Briefly describe a failure that you have had in your career, and what did you learn from that experience, and could you translate that into how you would be a senator?
Let's see. I haven't had any failures. Am I allowed to talk about my legislative experience? Well, I had a bill this past session that I was really excited about, which would have created an ADA coordinator position at the top level of the administration, and it got through the House pretty easily. It was almost unanimously passed through the House, and then it was never taken up in the Senate. And I talked to my senators about the bill, and I learned a lot about how a bill is taken up on the other side of the aisle, how something that a person does, or not on the other side of the aisle, on the other side of the other body. I learned how other dynamics that may be at play, which are sometimes unexpected but need to be tended to. And it was really helpful to fully explore what went wrong and fully explore what could actually be done the next time to have a more positive outcome, since it really affects every single Vermonter, and I'd love to have a chance to come back at it.
So for 30 years, I ran health clubs, and still do, in fact. And early on in my career, I was on a bit of a fast track. I'd managed a couple of clubs, smaller clubs, but they did really well financially. And so they moved me up, the company that I was with at the time moved me up to its largest club at 26 years old. I was woefully unprepared. I did not know how to manage groups of people that had diverse opinions and varied opinions on virtually everything. Had trouble dealing with very difficult customers on a continual basis. But what it did is it showed me and taught me that you sometimes have to take a step back and go back to the minor leagues and learn how to hit the fastball sometimes, learn how to hit that curveball sometimes. And that's what I did. They moved me back to a smaller club, and I grew. And I learned how to deal with different personalities. I learned how to be more collaborative, how to grow in that environment. And it was, although a hit to the ego initially, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. So I have to say that that was, for me, how I grew and got better, and hopefully am a better person and a better legislator because of it.
This question is for first Chris and then Heather. State senators work part-time without paid personal staff, yet are responsible for both oversight and legislation. Where and how will you seek out new information?
So good. So I'm a firm believer in networking. Fortunately, with my role as the president of professional firefighters, is we go to what they call state and provincial leadership meetings in the spring and in the fall, where they get the presidents, secretary treasurers for, all 50 states and the provinces of Canada. And we meet and we network and we share, we each give a report from your state to let you know what goes on. So I think that's important, networking, because a lot of times I've realized that for some reason people think that it's only a Vermont problem, which a lot of the issues aren't Vermont problems. They're happening on the western side of the country. They're happening in Canada. And by networking and bringing that together, I think that's one of the positive traits I bring, that I know, is that the importance of seeking information outside. I know that it's hard, but I've heard that there's concerns, you're just a part-time legislator, you get a lot of people coming at you like lobbyists and all that, and that's the unique perspective I bring. My decade up there fighting for public safety and workers, that I know the game they play, but I'm also one of those in my job through the years, is I'm very factual driven. I like to look at the facts and the data, and if you can back that up, that's good. And how I seek that out is it goes back to getting outside of your comfort zone and talking with other people and seeing what else is happening, and doing the research. I'm very focused on researching. You can ask my family when I don't go out and just buy something spontaneously. It'll take me 2 or 3 or 4 months, because I want to make sure that if I'm buying something, it is the right thing to buy. I'm not wasting my money on something I got to replace 3 or 4 times. So that's kind of how I go at it, is I look at, all the different avenues, get all the research I can. One of the jobs I had with the fire department was investigating fire causes. What caused a fire? Investigation. And with that, you're looking at everything on it, and you start eliminating the stuff. So I kind of look at things in a methodical reason and the methodical way to go at it, and that's how I kind of go at it when I bring stuff on the state level and make my decisions.
Well, it's a big job, right? It's a big, big job. And I think networking is super important. We have 3 senators in Windsor District, so 3 of us will be working together up here. I would hope that it would be a team so that we can ask questions and delve into things and throw ideas off of one another. There are 180, there are 30 senators and 150 state reps, so that's another wealth of information once you get to know these folks. Constituents, ask them questions. As you notice in this forum, when I don't know something, I'm very comfortable with saying I don't know. And that's because I'm a nurse, and I used to teach nursing, and if you give the wrong drug, you could kill someone. So you know what? I'm just upfront with that. I can't know everything. I won't know everything. I can find out, and I know how to find out. So, but if you have colleagues and you have good relationships with people, even lobbyists, okay, because they come with a whole lot of information you just take in. And the other thing I think that you really need to do, which I'm very good at, is listening before you come to a conclusion. I think that answers the question. Yeah, thank you.
Great. So this is the last interview question. It's going to be the last question before closing statements. We're coming right towards the end. So, and this is going to be for Ben and Becca. Drawing on your previous experience, please describe your approach to building momentum for policy change. How would you engage allies, work with peers, and mobilize public pressure to achieve goals?
I think it starts with listening, information gathering, and building partnerships, which means building trust. And I've done that over and over again at the local level. We've got diverse stakeholders, even within a town the size of Pomfret, and towns beyond our borders, and we've been able to achieve things like creating a regional partnership with the town of Hartford to reduce emergency services costs and response times. And that was a challenging thing to negotiate when we have a very well-staffed volunteer fire department and fast squad. But that began by listening, meeting with everyone who is involved, convincing or explaining that we're not looking to replace the fire department, we're not looking to replace the volunteer fast squad, we're looking to help them and backfill their duties, but that we need to reduce response times in the northern end of town because they were unacceptably high. And that took some diplomacy, and it took some openness and trust building, and I think that is an exportable process to the state legislature, where you're going to have people who don't necessarily agree with you on everything. You have people who don't necessarily trust you yet, and it's a painstaking, unglamorous process of meeting with everyone who has an interest in a challenge, convincing them that you have their best interest at heart and that you are listening, that you are open to new information, you're open to revising your views if needed, and that you're open to working collaboratively to a solution that benefits everyone.
Well, this question makes me think of Mosen Madawi, and the reason I think of him is because when he was detained by Homeland Security in Colchester, that was not the first time any of us heard of his name in the Upper Valley. We knew him as a person, we knew each other and our relationships to him, and so to have any kind of successful movement or coalition being built, you already have to have an interpersonal or community-based relationship with a lot of people. I've seen folks attempt to move the political issue of the day, and then no one's calling me about it. It's just astroturfing. So the reason I think we were able to get Mosen released was because we had an immediate action that we were able to take. People need something to do. They need something to react to. They need to have delegated tasks. So when he was taken, my job was call the federal government folks, call our Congress people, go on every interview possible because I don't get nervous in front of cameras, make sure I post on social media. You know, it's just delegating those tasks. And I've seen that movement here with you protecting your schools in Woodstock. You know, it's the same kind of delegated social movement as Margaret Mead is so famous for saying. You know, it's not a small group of people. Can they get anything done? No, it's the only thing that ever has of committed people. So those would be my main things. I'd also say clear messaging when people feel like they are in the know and they know what's going on, when they get consistent updates, when the asks make sense to them. Yeah, pretty classic. And then the last thing I would say that's special to Vermont and just my previous work with movement and social change has been we've been on the forefront. So we also need to be comfortable with hearing the worst of the worst arguments and responding to them. And I think of reproductive justice. I think of LGBTQIA plus rights. I think of climate change. We have to be able to be comfortable responding as a collective with shared information on what an appropriate response is. And that takes years, so.
Thank you all for your thoughtful answers to all of these questions.
Yeah.
We'll now take 1 minute and 30 seconds for closing statements. This will be an opportunity to answer any question that you did not get a chance to answer or to elaborate. We will start with Becca and move in reverse order back to this end of the table.
Well, thank you again for coming out. It has been such a privilege to be your senator for the last 4 years, and as you may know, I was a state representative before that, and I served on the select board for 2 terms before that. So I'm not new to politics, although I'm a young face in the building as the youngest state senator at 32. But I want to really end my contribution to this forum with 2 thoughts. The first is you could shuffle this board any way you wanted, and you'd get 3 fantastic state senators, and I just have to say that. So wherever you land on your ballot, I think we are in good hands, and I hope you show up when we run against the Republicans, potentially, because I have some disagreements with some of the candidates I'm seeing on that side. And then the second thing I want to communicate is that this election will help whoever wins be informed about what you as constituents want. You've heard candidates who have espoused more progressive views on things. You've heard candidates who have solid opinions on a topic that you might disagree with. But if you don't show up to vote, we won't have that information, even if you don't vote for us. Whoever wins will be informed by your vote. So even if there's not 1 candidate or 3 candidates that you love, going out and voting and picking who closest aligns with you will be valuable information for whoever is elected. And then in conclusion, you know, I grew up low income. My mom would describe us as poor. My dad would have said middle class. And I know what it means to be your cashier, your nursing home server, and I know how to be a good public servant, and it would be an honor to continue that role. So thank you.
Thank you all for coming out this afternoon. I want to go back to the AI data center, et cetera, question, because I think it is a recurring theme in Vermont. We're a small state, one of the things I love about Vermont. But we are up against some pretty big forces in the world beyond our borders. And AI technology companies are one, but you can think of other examples, private equity, et cetera. And I think one of the things we need to be sensitive to as Vermonters is that we are often outmatched by the forces that are licking their chops coming into Vermont. And we need to be smart about that. And we need to send representatives and senators to Montpelier who understand that dynamic and can push back against it. When I'm not doing this, I'm an attorney in private practice, and I represent many small companies, emerging companies, and I'm often across the table from big money parties. I'm often standing between big money parties and my clients, and one of the things that I try to do is protect my clients' interests, small companies, entrepreneurs. And I think that is analogous to what we see in Vermont. Vermont versus data companies, Vermont versus private equity gobbling up homes, gobbling up veterinary practices. I've seen it, I understand the dynamic, and I want to protect Vermont and Vermonters from it if I'm elected. And then I think the other, just last point, the other value add I bring is the practical implementation experience. As a select board chair in a town with no manager, we have to do the work directly. And we can't just have ideas and pass ordinances, we have to get the job done. And I've seen how the job gets done, and I've seen how the job doesn't always get done when laws come down from Montpelier that don't make a lot of sense for small towns. And if elected, I would like to close that gap and help my colleagues in the legislature pass laws that make sense back at home so that we can achieve the goals and solve the big problems that our state faces. Thank you.
Hi, Heather Chase from Chester, Southern Windsor County. And I want to thank you all for being here, but also I want to say thank you to everyone on this panel. We've all worked really hard at the primary, and we've crossed paths, and there's just a whole lot of talent and a whole lot of effort that's gone into this. And last week, I had a hard day on the campaign trail, and I know you all have had one of those, and no one was home to stock the refrigerator. I had no food, so I stopped at a Chinese restaurant, and I got Chinese food, and I was so hungry. I had to pop a fortune cookie, before I got home. And then I'm reading the fortune, and I couldn't believe it. It said, "Don't panic." And so I ate the second fortune cookie because I was super hungry. And that said, all your hard work will be rewarded. And I hope that this is the fortune of all of ours, because at August 12th, the day after the primary, 3 of us have to go up against 3 Southern Windsor County Republicans. I lost my House seat by 43 votes. I know how it feels to lose to MAGA Republicans. They're out there, they're well-funded, and I would just suggest that we really get out and vote for the primary, and August 12th, we get on Democratic team and go like hell. Thanks so much.
Wow, that's going to be a hard one to follow, huh? So, first of all, I want to thank you all for taking an hour and a half out of your day on a nice, beautiful Saturday afternoon that you could be out enjoying the weather. Chris Dube, retired firefighter. I've spent over 3 decades of my life running towards danger, whether it be, in a fire or helping people as a proven labor leader. So I know what it means to have somebody's back. That's something that's very dear and true to us in the professional firefighters world with the IFF. We pride ourselves on looking out for each other. We call it, brotherhood and a sisterhood, where it really is a family, and we have each other's backs. And that's something that I'll bring to the State House, of having your backs, and make sure that I advocate for you up there. Sometimes that's missed, but that's something that's been instilled in me for over 30-something years. So I believe in fairness, dignity and equality for all. I think that's very important in this day and age. We see it with the disparity between, the wealthy and the not so wealthy. And that's something I fought for in my entire adult life, basically, is to kind of level that playing field and make the worker appreciated in the state. I wish I had all the answers. I know I don't. I've learned. I continue to grow. I'm a firm believer that you make mistakes. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you a bunch of different stuff. I'll tell you this, that if I'm fortunate enough to earn your respect and your vote, that I will be a fierce fighter up in Montpelier. I'll listen to what you all have to say. And it's not about what Chris Dube wants. It's about what you all want. It's your money. I'm responsible for that, and I want to make sure that it's spent and cared for in a manner that makes us all happy and prosperous. So thank you.
Wow, this last biennium was a tremendous learning experience for me. I went through and I said, they didn't cover this part in Schoolhouse Rock. There were a lot of twists and turns and frustration, things that I thought before I got into the Senate that I could do that, in fact, that I could not. But one of the things that did not change was relationship building. Not only relationships with people within my party, but people across the aisle, people that were in the other body that you talked to, that you grew relationships with, that you found out what unintended consequences were of an action. Time and time again, I thought I could veer right and found out, no, you should veer left. They say that it takes about 6 years until you know what the heck you're doing in the Senate. That's probably right. I appreciate you sending me to Montpelier 2 years ago, and I hope that I have done enough to earn your vote this year. So thank you for coming. Thank the moderators, and thank you, my colleagues on the dais.
I want to go back to the very first question. Since I was the first person to answer the first question, I just wanted to clarify that when we were talking about demographics, I was thinking about the actual demographics of people and how you can frame that in so many different ways. And then I was thinking about the town demographics and how Springfield versus Woodstock. And I think it's a really great example of, number one, why we shouldn't have statewide mandates for towns, why we should create tools for towns to be able to use to, provide, if they want to access them to grow economically, they can or not. But I think that we should steer away from statewide mandates because statewide statutes can benefit one town while hampering another. I want to also go back to, how to get young people to move into the state, and I think we can do that. I've been thinking about this a lot. One thing we can do is provide paid family medical leave. We could provide universal health care, and we could provide statewide broadband that would allow equitable opportunity for people to be able to access well-paying jobs all over the state. And so I also wanted to say that this job has two sides. This job has two sides. One is at the legislature, one is back at home, and it's really important that you elect somebody who is going to pay attention to you for the other months out of the year. And just as a public service announcement, not for me, on the ballot in November, there are two proposed constitutional amendments. One is Proposition 3, which is, as Chris mentioned already, the right to collective bargaining, and one is also Proposition 4, which is equal protection under the law, which we do not actually have in our Constitution currently, and that'll be on the November ballot.
Thank you, everyone, for coming, and please do remember to vote on August 11th. Thank you, candidates.